This is Gamescom Studio. One of the biggest surprises to come out of Opening Night Live was the official reveal of Zero Parades, formerly Project C4, which is the next game from Zaum, the studio behind Disco Elysium. Here to tell me about it, VO director and writer Jim Ashilevi. Welcome.
Thanks. Hello.
So,
pleasure to be here.
This is a game, a lot of buzz around this. I think immediately people look at it and it resembles Disco quite a bit. We got a trailer that has very stylish aesthetics and some snippets of gameplay. What about this is going to be kind of out the gate familiar? What's going to feel, what's going to sound, what's going to look like Disco, and what is immediately going to make people go, oh, this is a different project entirely?
Well, I'll start from the second part of your question. I think what stands out as something completely different is the fact that it's a new universe. It's a completely new IP, it's a completely new world, a completely new cast of characters. So there are no lore-related links between the world of Elysium and the world of Z4, Zero Parade. However, what makes it feel familiar to people who were super into Disco Elysium is the fact that a lot of the core sensibilities behind the project, the sensibilities shared by members of the team largely remain the same, because a lot of the people that made Disco Elysium are now here to make Zero Parades as well. So there's still the same people with the same fascinations and obsessions, the same sources of inspiration, and that is blended together with all the new voices in the studio that come with their own perspectives and their own obsessions and desires and fears and whatever.
Nice. Let's back this up. This is an espionage game. What does that mean?
It's an espionage CRPG. It means that you're there on a mission and you're a spy. The protagonist is a spy called Herschel, and Herschel is a deeply flawed individual. She doesn't really know why she's back in theater, because her previous mission ended so disastrously. It ended with most of the people she cared about just dying or getting abducted, or or they just disappeared from Herschel's life because they now hate her. And now she needs to simultaneously solve this extremely complicated global political game of chess, and then also find a way back to the people that do not want to see her ever again, or can't see her ever again because they're dead. But she needs to find a way back regardless. And also, we're deeply fascinated with the espionage genre. We look toward authors like John le Carré, the author of books such as Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People. But we also needed to put a Zaum twist on the entire thing. And splice it with elements of science fiction. I'm looking towards authors like Philip K. Dick and Ursula K. Le Guin and Stanislav Lem. And this is where the bizarre and psychedelic elements of the game come into play. So it's a mix or a blend of many different things. We've also looked towards Korean cinema. We're particularly inspired by Park Chan-wook's work, director of Old Boy and Decision to Leave. So a lot of different sources of inspiration come together to form this highly uncomfortable and silly and weird espionage game. It's not a glamorous experience. I think when people think about espionage, or espionage as it's been represented in pop culture, they usually think about characters like James Bond and Jason Bourne and the Mission Impossible films.
Yeah, cool spies.
And we were interested in exploring the seedier and more mundane aspects of being a spy. What does it actually feel like to be in the shoes of someone who has an enormous responsibility placed on her shoulders, but also doesn't know what it is that she's expected to do in theater, and also can't go it alone because she's not an action hero. She's a normal, flawed human being with an enormous burden of guilt and remorse and pain and unresolved trauma. But then also she needs to find a way back to the people who kind of caused that and whom she kind of killed spiritually. So there, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about how that kind of comes into play mechanically, because one of the impressive things about Disco was how it was like compelling, and there was basically no combat. You kind of just talked your way through the whole thing, and a lot of it was also just kind of in your own head.
Sure.
I guess, is there combat? Will there be sort of violent altercations? Is that part of the spy thing, or is this more of just kind of like a emphasis on intelligence, I guess?
There will be a lot of violence, but it's mainly psychological and emotional, I would say. We're not making an action game. Again, espionage fiction, does come with its own tropes and traditions, I guess. And eventually there needs to be like a high-octane motorcycle chase through the streets of a small town in Italy, or there's like an airplane chasing another airplane and things explode, and people jump out of planes and still chase each other while opening their parachutes and things like that. None of that stuff is happening in Zero Parades because we're still just geeks and writers and people who grew up playing tabletop games and like narrative experiences. And I would say that is the thing we do at our studio. We tell stories. So it's a deeply immersive experience where you do get to both navigate this extremely complicated web of relationships, as well as go deeper into your own psyche and deal with your own paranoia and your own inner voices that kind of, might be steering you toward the right direction and might also be steering you toward certain death.
Sure. Okay, so in Disco there was the thought cabinet, which was kind of an extension of Harry, the protagonist. But in this case, you are a protagonist who's kind of trying to be somebody else, right? Like you're kind of putting a forward-facing thing. And there's sort of a cognitive dissonance that comes with that. And you've kind of gamified that, right?
Right, yeah. And we do have an updated version of the thought cabinet in our game, and we call it conditioning, because since we have shifted genres a little bit, I mean, detective stories and espionage stories are kind of related, but they're not the same thing. And so when we looked towards espionage fiction and its tropes and traditions, it instantly became clear that, well, one, spies need to be conditioned in a certain way. They need to go through a certain kind of training in order to even be able to, drop their actual persona and become someone else, and then the next day again drop that persona and become another person once again. And so the conditioning system is our new game mechanic that sort of gamifies the process of either reinforcing certain aspects of your psyche or your emotional landscape, or punishing those aspects. And then, depending on the decision you make, the game kind of reacts to that, and the options that open up to you or go away depend on those moments in the conditioning.
Can you give me an example?
Scenes. Well, here's an example. Let's say you've decided that you're a non-smoker now. I'm not sure if you are a smoker. Just this is just an example. Let's say you were a smoker and you've now decided, I don't want to smoke anymore. I'm no longer a smoker. Okay. Next day, and you're a spy, by the way. Next day, you attend this fancy dinner with a lot of delegates coming together and discussing, top secret stuff. And some of the key members of the delegation go out to the balcony to have a smoke. And you're like, okay, so I decided to be a non-smoker yesterday. I quit smoking yesterday, and now these delegates, the very people I need to go and talk to, are having a smoke on the balcony. I think I probably should go and have a smoke with them and have a chat and see if I can kind of siphon information out of them by just being casual and chill and social. And so what do? Do you go out there and have a smoke and have that conversation, but then betray your decision from the previous day, or do you stay inside and find another way to talk to these people? This is kind of a silly, mundane example, but what I mean by that is the point of the conditioning system is to keep asking you whether you are the person you've decided to be, or you're the person you actually are. judging by your actual actions in life and in theater as a spy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I mean, kind of like it's definitely like this is cerebral concepts here. Like the smoking thing that you pull up as an example, that's often the example used when people just look up what is cognitive dissonance, where it's like, it's unhealthy, but you continue to do it, and holding these two contrary opinions. Was that like the inspiration for this mechanic? Like what's the kernel of this game?
I think dissonance is the key word. Yeah, dissonance is the key word. It's all about placing moral dilemmas in front of the player's eyes and making them make a decision that then informs the kind of person or the kind of spy that you aspire to be in the game. And there's a built-in dissonance in the difference between the spy you aspire to be and the spy you actually are, judging by your actions in the game, in theater. So yeah, it's there's a lot of. We also have something called the pressures system, where your own, psyche and emotional arsenal sort of either supports you or makes things far too hard. For instance, you need to have a conversation with someone. You need to. Lie to them about something, tell them, oh, I wasn't there yesterday, I wasn't the one who took the briefcase, let's say. But then you've had a coffee beforehand because you were super tired, because you hadn't slept for 48 hours, let's say.
Okay.
So you needed to go and buy a coffee and drink it and, reduce the fatigue level, the fatigue pressure. So the fatigue pressure now goes down, but your anxiety goes way up.
Oh my God.
And then when you have that conversation with that person, trying to lie to that person and say, I wasn't the one who took the briefcase, you're going to fail.
Because your anxiety's through the roof.
Because your anxiety's through the roof. And your entire nervous system is kind of making it impossible for you to just have a simple conversation with someone.
I love that not only is this not a power fantasy, this is like, what if awkward conversations were even more stressful and nerve-wracking? And
It is an anti-power fantasy.
I love it.
Herschel, in many ways, is the anti-James Bond. There is no glamour in Zero Parades, and also there are zero parades.
Nice. Damn. Well, there goes my pre-order. I like parades. I wanted to see some parades.
Sorry.
Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about this. The trailer has a lot of like pre-alpha gameplay, little snippets, a lot of concept art, so people think it's a long way off. Do you have any kind of target release window when people can expect to actually play this?
Sooner than you'd think.
Okay, cool. Good to hear it. Zero Parades will be coming to PC sometime, but right now there's more Gamescom Studio coming up right here on IGN.